was told all about Nicholas Cruz, from his gun ownership to his desire to kill people to the potential of him conducting a school shooting. Perhaps if they'd looked, they would have discovered this footage taken by a former neighbor and said to show Cruz practicing taking shots in his yard last year.
Was wrong?
Well, there was high security because students were smoking in the restrooms that day, but nobody thought anything of it. And it was like a regular class period, and then around 2:15, we heard the first shots.
Let's go. We're now learning more about the timeline of Cruz's murderous rampage. He arrived at the high school in an Uber at 2:19 p.m. and made his way into the east building of the school compound, where he was spotted by freshman Chris McKenna.
He started to take the bullets and load in the gun. I froze. He then said to me, "Get out of here. It's gonna start getting messy."
Where was he loading his gun?
On the stairwell, the bottom stairwell. He took it out of like a gun case that kind of looked like a guitar case.
Why do you think he spared you?
I don't think he was fully reloaded yet. I don't think his bullets were in.
Chris ran for his life.
Say 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz has confessed to being the gunman, and the former student arrived in an Uber carrying an AR-15 rifle inside a soft black case.
The suspect exited the stairwell, pulled the rifle out of the case.
Then he began shooting into at least 5 different classrooms on 2 floors.
My wife calls me hysterical. There was a shooter active at the school. My daughter's with her friends right now, trapped in the closet. She's afraid to talk because she doesn't want to talk loud. Okay, and I'm hearing students here on the site. There's like a war zone here with cops, machine guns, helicopters. The FBI is here. Everyone's here, and they were saying that there's a guy out loose. He heard 8 shots. They're running. He was in the 1200 building.
Cruz fired into 4 classrooms on the first floor. Then he made his way to the second floor, then the third. At 2:28, he dropped his weapon, ran down the stairs, and fled the school, blending in with the students who were running for their lives.
He went from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. They're monitoring him on camera.
She was in the bathroom at the moment, and I came back to my classroom and I knocked on the door, and the fire alarm went off, and principal came on the speaker and just said everyone needs to evacuate right now. So that's what we did. As I was going down the stairs, I heard a couple shots fired. Everyone was freaking out, saying that it was a gun. And as we were walking, the whole class together, I actually was speaking to the suspect, Nicholas Cruz. And as I was speaking to him, he seemed very, I don't know what the word I want to say is, but he was trouble in middle school. So I kind of joked to him about it and said, "I'm surprised you weren't the one who did it." And he just gave me a huh. So that's really what happened.
That's right. The student I talked to tells me that he went to school with Nicholas Cruz since the 6th grade. He says they, fell out of touch about a year ago, but he says they met again on the day of the shooting.
Ethan True is a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He says Wednesday he was on the other side of the school next to the garden when the fire drill started. He says at first everyone lined up outside as normal, but then they were pushed further away toward the fence near a local middle school. And he says that's when he saw Nicholas Cruz walk right by him.
I remember seeing Nick Cruz walk past me. He was looking down, he was on 3:20, I guess, and he walked right past me, and my friend Alexa and I, we noticed him, but we didn't really say much. And apparently he greeted, like some people greeted him, and he greeted back as normal.
He says when he later learned 17 people at the school were shot and killed and Cruz was the alleged gunman, he couldn't believe it.
Not rationalizing or justifying what he did, it was completely wrong and disgusting. But from what I've known him since 6th grade, he is probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
And Toddy says, he should have seen the signs, noted the signs with his friend. He says he can't wrap his head around this because he didn't see any red flags. Reported.
He followed those kids to a Subway restaurant located inside this Walmart.
After walking for about a half a mile, he stops into this McDonald's and sits down for a few minutes. The flag here today flying at half-mast.
Cruz even ordered a sandwich, and despite the carnage he had caused, he sat at a table and ate his meal. Then he headed for home. At 3:41, Cruz was spotted by a police officer who heard the description of the suspect over his radio.
You were the first one on the scene.
I was the first one on the scene. It was crazy.
Landscape gardener Scott Baker recorded the takedown on his cell phone, which he shared exclusively with Inside.
Came and told me he went to the 1200 building and he said that he saw a lot of smoke and he heard firecrackers, so he left the building and came back. And I said firecrackers. As soon as he said that, the fire bells went off. So when the fire bells went off, we were supposed to run towards that direction. And then as we started running, I heard the gunshots. And it was just like loud. And then I said, oh my God. And he said, miss, I'm telling you. So we ran the other way. And we just kept running until we ended up inside a building.
It sounded like fireworks and it smelled like fireworks. You could see how big the bullets casings, or just the bullets, you could see how big they were.
There was like bullets, like huge bullets everywhere, and then 2 people I saw, their bodies were down.
And there was shattered glass all over the floor.
And I just ran. I ran as fast as I can through the glass that the shooter broke, and I was like...
That morning? You had a fire drill that morning?
Yeah, and we all knew what to do, so we started heading out the classroom, but when we were trying to go down the stairwell, everybody just stopped. I smelled dust, and I didn't know what it was, so I thought it was like the school trying to pretend like fake smoke.
So you hadn't heard any shots yet?
No, but when everybody started running up the stairs, I was being shoved, and then I started hearing gunshots.
But at first you thought it was just another drill?
Yeah.
And then you got back into the classroom?
Yeah, I had talked to my teacher and said I am scared, and then we all heard gunshots, and he unlocked the door and let us in.
They were putting mats over them so we wouldn't see them, but there was dust all over the floor from this weird string they threw in there. And then I thank God to this teacher who opened up her door and let all of us in. She got shot in the arm trying to open the door, and then the other teacher, he got shot in the head trying to cut the other students, and
had begun. I was about 2 feet away from my door. All of a sudden I heard gunshots in the stairwell, which is about 20 feet away from my room. And then kids were screaming and then running back towards me and towards the end of the hallway. So I just went in this very strange autopilot mode where I pivoted on my feet, I unlocked my door, and then kids just started pouring in my room. I don't know how many kids were in there, but I was pulling them and getting them in and shouting at them to get in the room. And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway, just a barrage of bullets. And I'm staring at him thinking, why is the police here? This is strange, because he's in full metal garb, helmet, face mask, bulletproof armor, shooting this rifle that I've never seen before. I don't know when I decided it was the right time to close the door. I grabbed the handle with both hands, and that's when I got nicked, or grazed, or whatever you call it.
So a bullet hit your arm?
Yes. As I'm closing my door, I'm shouting at my next door neighbor, Mr. Scott Beagle, to close his door. And he's the kind of man that would just keep that door open a little longer. You know, he's all about the kids, you know, but he couldn't see the shooter. I had a good visual of him, which is why I yelled at him to shut his door now. I heard him shoot a barrage of bullets into Mr. Beagle's room. And then he came to my room.
Really bad.
Now, one student told me that the shooter was wearing a bulletproof vest and a helmet. Did you see that?
I saw some other kid. When the other kid who came into the classroom, he was wearing some type of thing, and like, I don't know, but it was like, I froze at that moment. There's English threw in there. They're trying to.
So you think there was more than? Do you think there was more than one
There's
shooter?
3 shooters right here. Definitely. Suck it up if you're crying, because we're not trying to get shot. Because he was in the hallway yelling, "Hey, hey," trying to taunt us and get us to say things, trying to get us outside. And that's when some other kid, like, he ran out because he thought it was free, but he got shot. And then we heard the groaning outside, and we couldn't do anything.
Well, so the shooter, tell me, besides, hey, what was he saying during
He
all
wasn't
this?
doing anything. He was legit. He just ran up the stairs, started shooting, and you could see a bunch of kids just going down that way, but stopping. But because the other shooter was coming, so everybody was
screaming and stuff.
Everybody was trampling each other because they were like, "Hey, did you hear that?"
At that point, I mean, you were hearing gunshots go off, and it was ricocheting with the sound off the other building, and we didn't know whether it was one shooter or two. And one of the boys that initially ran into my room was like, "There's 2 shooters on," and the kids were just, it was very intense. It feels like it was like an hour, but in reality, it was like 30 seconds. And I remember standing there with like...
You were walking down the hall. He had already fired at that time.
Yes, sir, with him.
Weren't you scared?
In the moment I wasn't, because there was definitely another shooter involved, but...
Oh, you think he was not the only one?
No, definitely not.
Why do you say that?
Because when shots were fired, I saw him after the fact. So, and the shots were coming from the other part of the building. So there definitely had to be 2 shooters involved, I believe.
That's the first I've heard of that. Did you see any other students who were wounded?
No, sir.
Burgundy shirt, wearing a black hat, and either long black pants or shorts. He mixed in with a group of students that were running westbound.
With the
knew it before, but his plan may have fallen apart. He didn't quite know at that point exactly what to do, but it also could be that he felt he wanted to talk.
First floor when we heard the shooting and it came in towards the right side of the building. We have been practicing drills for months since we got back from winter break and even before that. So when it first happened, we all thought it was a drill.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of screaming saying, "Help me." He was like screaming, and I thought it was a joke. I thought he must not be, like, because they told us that they were gonna have like fake, and have people being taken away and like have them scream or whatever. So I was like it must be
like in a
fake.
school drill? Like,
Yeah,
is that
like a drill? And so I just figured it was that, but it was like so real. I could hear his voice. He was very, very like gasping.
Now, I know you told me you didn't know the guy who was shooting and you hardly saw him, but of what you saw, can you tell me what you saw? You didn't know him?
It was just a split. There was like 2 people run past, and it was just black. I couldn't see anything, and the slit that I was looking through was so thin that it was just like, right, like 1, 2.
Was he saying anything? Was he
I just
screaming?
heard laughing. I heard laughing.
Laughing?
Right when they walked through the door, and then I heard people run down the stairs, and then that was it for a little while, and then it was just somebody screaming, "Help me."
And just so everybody knows, so this was in the freshman building. For those who aren't familiar with the school,
Third
it was
floor, freshman building.
3rd floor of the freshman building. Explain what the layout of the school is like. So there's more than one building, and
It's just the freshman building is separate from the entire school. There's one floor which has one aisle and it has doors on all sides, and then another floor has an aisle, and another floor has an aisle. I was on the top at the very end of the back, so the staircase was right by the door.
All right, well, listen, I want you to go find your dad. If you need a cell phone number to call, let me know. All right, I know your phone is dead. We want to send it back to Michael.
I went running around trying to find out where I was supposed to be, and I got locked out of my classroom with a couple other kids.
and we couldn't get into a classroom. We were all stuck in the hallway, kind of just running. We didn't know where he was. We couldn't hear the gunshots anymore.
How did you know there was a he? So you heard shots?
Yeah, we did hear shots.
And did you think instantly, oh my God, those were gunshots? Or did you think it was balloons popping, as one student told me? And how would you even know what it would sound like?
I thought it was a drill because they told us we would have police officers who were going to be firing blanks to like scare us, get us like, you know, trained for this. So no one took it seriously until I heard like screaming. It was the worst screaming I'll ever hear. It was awful. Like.
How the shootings occurred.
Where were you when you got that phone call and your heart had just dropped?
So today has been a day of enormous mountains and valleys. I was leaving Monarch High School, where we were giving the Teacher of the Year keys to a brand new Toyota Camry that she won from being a Teacher of the Year in Broward County. We were celebrating our teachers, our schools, and got in the car. And as I'm driving back to the office, I start seeing communication, and I hear from staff that we may have a tragedy. And that's so I literally have come from giving the Teacher of the Year a car and celebrating our teachers and our district to where I am right now.
The deadliest school shooting in Broward County ever.
That's what it appears to be.
Call the police or notify some other authority that that person is going to be in trouble, they're going to be arrested, and it's all going to be their fault. And that's not necessarily the case. Law enforcement has many, opportunities and means to try to intercede, but they can't do it if they don't know or they're not made aware of.
It's in there in the closet until they came and got us out. And it is, and I don't want to say his name because what if it's not? But he was kicked out of the school last year, and I guess he came back. Because he wasn't a student here this year. He definitely wasn't.
And you heard a rumor that
back to that day. Was there anything unusual, out of the normal with his behavior before that day?
No. The only thing that was maybe different was that he didn't go to school. He usually drives him to school with him in the morning. He didn't go that particular morning, which sometimes happens. And
he said he didn't go to school on Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But when did you realize what he had done?
After the SWAT team called me and asked if I knew where my son Nicholas was. And I said, he's not my son, but I don't know where he's at. And at that point, I got in touch with my son, who was fleeing the scene at that point. And a description came out, and we put 2 and 2 together, me and my son, and we figured out what was happening.
And what was going through your mind when this happened? Did you both find out at the same time?
No, she was home sleeping. And
too far, about a couple miles here from the school.
And what was, as far as you know, what was Nick up to at this time?
Well, he was supposed to have gone to his adult education school that morning, but when he was woken up to go, he said something to the effect of, it's Valentine's Day, I don't go to school on Valentine's Day. And they didn't think anything of it and just left him, and they went on their business. The other young man went to school, and everybody else went to work, and they lost track of him at that point. He was in touch with the son by text, but there's nothing in those texts. We've turned him over to the police to indicate that he was up to anything devious like this.
Had the family...
Well, Todd, by all accounts, it has been a very long and trying day for police officers and investigators who are inside and outside of Stoneman Douglas High School. We just talked with a police officer who came into contact with the shooter, the first to come into contact with him after he left the campus. This is Officer Michael Douglas. He is with the Coconut Creek Police Department. After the shooting at the school, he responded to the area and decided to expand his search for the gunman. Dispatchers gave him a description of the suspect. Officer Leonard saw someone walking in a neighborhood fitting that description.
He looked like a typical high school student, and for a quick moment, I thought, could this be the person? Is this who I need to stop?
Officer Leonard says he trusted his instincts, and the person we now know as Nicholas Cruz complied with his demands, and he was taken into custody. Cruz was checked out at the hospital, then was taken to the Broward County Jail.
20-something students and people that were injured over there. Everyone has been treated and taken to area hospitals. There was a mass casualty incident that was put out across Broward and Palm Beach County to notify hospitals that there were going to be a number of injuries and a number of people transported. They developed information very, very quickly through witnesses and through school records of who this person was. I'm still going to hold off on the name until we get a confirmation, but we do have the name of the person, his age and all that information. They had a description of what he was wearing. They checked surveillance cameras in the buildings and around the area. They were able to determine exactly where he worked and his scheduling. He was in school today, identified by a teacher at the scene of the initial shooting, and with that information, developing that information, they put a dragnet out all over this area. I'd estimate that it's probably about a 4 or 5 square mile area, and you're watching them right now process this person, the guy in the burgundy shirt that we mentioned, and black pants. He was wearing a black hat at the time that the shootings took place, and he is in police custody right now.
Jim Gard is a math teacher at the school, and he taught the shooting suspect, Nicholas Cruz, just last year. He joins us tonight. Mr. Gard, thanks for coming on.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
Well, so you're the first person we've spoken to who knew the suspect personally. He was in your class. What was your view of him?
Well, I think I only had him for maybe a semester in 2000, like between August and December of 2016, when I can remember. I just was able to look at my computer. I have to look at it a little bit later on to be 100% sure. But, you know, he was in class. I mean, he was real quiet. I mean, nothing outstanding. I mean, I know we got a couple of emails, you know, here or there from admin regarding Nick, but I'd have to get into my computer when I get home and take a look and see if those emails are anything significant that I can remember, because it's been over a year.
Well, let me put it this way. When you saw his face on television and read his name, did you think, I'm shocked by this? Or did you think, you know, of the kids I teach, maybe this isn't the most surprising suspect?
Right. Actually, I haven't even seen his face on television yet. We were in lockdown and no TVs on or anything like that. And when I had heard the name from some of my students when we were in the lockdown, you know, it hit me. It's like, oh, wow, I had Nick in class. And I was about to look him up, and then the police came and got us out of our room. So am I shocked? You know, I hate to say it. Nowadays, with all these school shootings, nothing's shocking anymore. And and that's horrible.
It is horrible. It's maybe the most horrible part of all of it.
I never really associated with him or talked to him until one day I got paired to do a project with him. And he just started talking to me. He was telling me about how they got expelled from 2 different private schools. He was held back twice. He had aspirations to join the military, and he enjoyed hunting.
People said he made unusual markings on his body. He left an incredible trail of kind of evidence pointing to this on social media. It sounds like he was the kind of kid you then took pains to avoid.
I hadn't seen that at the time. I just always thought that he was unusual and strange. Always sat alone, twiddling his thumbs, keeping to himself, laugh at himself.
So what was your reaction when you heard that it was him?
I wasn't surprised, but it was kind of unfortunate to hear.
What will lawmakers do now after the Florida massacre? Let's discuss with 2 former U.S. representatives from the Republican Party. We have David Jolly and CNN political commentator Jack Kingston. It's great to have both of you. You're both Republicans, and now you can speak freely because you are out of Congress. Jack, I want to start with something that you tweeted because I don't understand it. So let me read to everyone what you tweeted on Sunday night about this. You said, "Oh, really? Students are planning a nationwide rally, not left-wing gun control activists using 17-year-old kids in the wake of a horrible tragedy. Hashtag Soros, hashtag resistance, hashtag Antifa, hashtag DNC. Do you think that, Jack? You think? You're serious?
Allison,
you think these kids aren't acting on their own volition?
Allison, I think it's a horrible tragedy, and I'm heartbroken that young people have gone through this, and I hope that it never happens again. But I also know that their sorrow can very easily be hijacked by left-wing groups
but do you think
who
it has
have an
been?
agenda. Well, let's ask ourselves, do we really think that, and I say this sincerely, do we really think 17-year-olds on their own are going to plan a nationwide rally?
Jack.
I would say to you very plainly that organized groups that are out there, like George Soros, are always ready to take the charge, and it's kind of like instant rally, instant protest, and those groups are ready to take it,
Jack,
take it to
I'm
the
sorry,
streets.
I have to correct you. I was down there. I talked to these kids. These kids were, Jack, these kids were wildly motivated. I talked to these kids before they knew the body count of how many of their friends had been killed. No, Jack, no one had talked to them yet. They hadn't been indoctrinated by some left-wing group. They were motivated from what they saw and what they endured during that ordeal.
I don't doubt their sincerity.
Yes, you do, Jack.
I absolutely know these children are heartbroken, but I also know they probably do not have the logistical ability to plan a nationwide rally without it being hijacked by groups that already had the pre-existing anti-gun agenda.
Jack, it's just silly. They're already doing it. They're on buses going to the state legislature today. They're 17 years old. They can figure this out. But
they have the money for the bus, and they're ready to go. I mean, I just have a hard time believing it.
David,
come on.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, Jack, you're a friend. Who cares who's paying for the gasoline for them to get their voice to legislators? Who cares? No, listen. Well, the message they're getting out is not a left-wing confiscation. They are not getting out a left-wing confiscation message. They are suggesting that, yes, there can be a constitutional right, but not beyond the reach of reasonable regulation. Jack, listen.
Hold on. Jack, let David talk. Hold on, Jack. Let David. Go ahead, David. Make your point.
Here's the point. Here's what the American people are crying out for leadership on. They want universal and comprehensive background checks. They want it to be as difficult to get an assault weapon as it is to get a security clearance in this White House. And they want to see dramatic enforcement of the laws on the books. You don't get to choose which one of those three will stop gun violence.
Talk about, we were saying during the break, the last time you were here, it was right after the Vegas shooting, and now you're here after the Florida shooting, and you just donated $500,000 to give these kids hotel rooms, transportation.
To help other kids around the country to be able to join the march.
We need as many kids to get there, so all the money that's donated, George Clooney and Amal are donating $500,000. You're donating $500,000, I think. Katzenberg and the Spielbergs are also donating. So everybody that donates anything at all helps more kids get to Washington, because it seems like it's going to be the kids that make a difference now. It's finally their time.
You know what's exciting to me, Ellen? Before George and Amal made their announcement, I literally was sitting in my home thinking about all those years I was a reporter in Baltimore. And when I first started being a young reporter, there was an organization started called Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because we reached a tipping point of too many kids being killed by drunk drivers. And I literally was sitting, they need a name. Should it be Mothers Against Senseless Killings? That'll be MASK. I don't know if that is already in existence, but I was thinking those kids need to organize, because this is the moment, because this is exactly what happened in the civil rights movement for people like John Lewis and Diana Nash. They were 18, 19, 20 years old, young people who said, we have had enough. And these kids are right there.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so excited that they're going to get a platform of your show. You need to tell them they got to get organized, though. The reason why the civil rights movement worked is there was a strategy, there was a plan. It wasn't just, like out there hocus pocus, protesting all the time. There was a strategy.